welcome everybody. This is a tribute to our co-leader and friend, Jim Bloss, who recently passed this last Thursday. And I'll just offer this up to whoever wants to go first, and I'll fill in at the tail end if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, uh, would uh, would anybody like to go first?
Yeah, well, I've known Jim Bloss for probably 40 plus years because when I first came to Monroe, he had the Monroe taxi and I was also very involved with Democratic politics. And As I met him at multiple meetings and just always remembers it was this wonderful ebullient guy who was always very positive and volunteered for everything. And then as I mentioned before, my son and his fiance bought a house on Tester Road. Um, Actually, it was just in 2008, about 5 months before the crash. But anyway, so they lived there for a couple of years, and Lynn and Jim lived a few houses away and got to know them. Um, not It was not a happy time for the home buyers, but they ended up, kind of walking away from the house. But then Jim was very involved in mental health and very involved with um, local politics, where I actually met with Jim and our uh, house person, Carolyn Eslick, and then just a great guy, great friend. Well, I'm actually had talked to him a couple of weeks ago, um, and had no idea how fast it would go. I was away last week, but I did not hear. But as soon as this is over, I'll send a condolence email to Lynn.
Thank you very much, Hans. Um, Beautifully spoken. Thank you. Um, uh, Ellie, would you like to go?
Sure, I'd love to say a few words about Jim. I knew him um, in his role as a group leader with you, and also he helped chair our Washington State Healthy Trees committee. And I swear, Jim had 10 ideas for everyone that I had. He was just overflowing with ideas. I have no idea how he kept up with all his emails. He was incredible on that. And I think part of his secret was remembering that our time is all limited. And just we would all do well to remember Jim's life and the great example he set for all of us. Um, and we'll all remember him. I know climate was just such a small part of the many things that he did.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Ellie. Beautifully put. Thank you very much. Elliot, would you like
I
to say a few words?
unfortunately I never met him, so I can't share anything, but he sounds like he was a really great guy.
He was. He was indeed. Thank you, Elliot. Um, Martin, would you care to share your thoughts?
I only knew Jim from this group, and we went to a high school and did a presentation. I guess it was about a year ago, And I was surprised how effective Jim was speaking to high school students. And he really engaged with them. And uh, it was easy to look up to him as a leader, uh, and enjoyed the time that I had with him. Otherwise, I knew him from these online meetings and always enjoyed his input, and realized I could never write a letter to the editor like he can. Um, so he will be greatly missed, and very sad to hear of his passing.
Yeah, yes.
He
That's all
certainly
we all.
is being greatly missed. I don't know that I've ever known anybody in my entire life that is as committed to so many aspects of the community as Jim was. Um, we sometimes joked that he knew everybody, and if he didn't know them, he knew somebody that knew them, and within a half an hour, we accomplished whatever we needed to make that connection. I was just mind boggled that at one point we were over at a snow put event. I think it was in April, and we couldn't walk more than 3 or 4 feet without somebody walking up to him and patting him on the back or saying, "Hey, how are you? It's been 2 months since we've seen each other." But everybody wanted to say hi to Jim just because he was somebody that was enjoyed, somebody that was respected, somebody that contributed so much to everybody's lives. I mean, in that event, I recall somebody that was involved in a faith-based effort was talking to him, and then as soon as they left, somebody else had known him through National Association, no, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and then somebody else had known him from it was a Sierra Club contact, but just seemed like everybody knew this guy, and it's like, hey, I'm with him. I want to talk to him, but I didn't. It's hard to get a word in edgewise because the community seemed to kind of surround him, and want to chat with him. I don't know how many people knew that his involvement with NAMI was a function of his son having serious mental illness, and he was so committed to his son. And I know that he was just proud as can be that his son recently got a job, recently moved into some kind of a supervised independent living. But it was just like that was a dream for Jim that his son could have that degree of independence. And I know that in part he was missing the day-to-day or hour-to-hour contact that he'd had with Jim, but he also knew it was the best thing for his son. I wish I could write like this guy wrote. John Bauer over at the Edmonds Herald, just like I think Jim must have been buddies with him because it seems like everything he sent in got published. That may not be fair. It got published because it was just really, really well thought out.
Yeah.
His decency just came through every aspect of what he was engaged in, regardless of whether it was passing out leaflets door to door during election season. And it seemed like every election there was people that he knew ought to be elected, and he was going to make sure that it happened, regardless of whether that was a county-wide thing or a city-wide thing or something at the state level. He knew what was right. He knew who was going to deliver for the people of the community.
Yeah.
Now, I guess one of the comments that I'd make, he was committed to the community, but really committed to family too. I mean, he made it very, very clear how incredibly important Lynn was to him, how incredibly important his son. And I know that the family extends beyond that, but it seems like he wanted to be there for everybody. And it just seemed like anytime that there was a need, he wanted to be able to put his effort into making sure that happened. He told me early on that he was suffering from pancreatic cancer. He knew he was suffering. He was living on borrowed time, and he felt a real sense of urgency that the community needed support, and he had the brains and the energy to do it. Oh my gosh, he had the energy.
Yeah.
This guy could write emails that were 4 pages long. It was like, a little less, Jim. Yeah, I love that guy, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Mark.
Mhm.
Such insightful comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll just fill in some aspects that I didn't hear. Um, Jim was a big supporter of all our endeavors at the Snohomish chapter. He was part of our nuclear video effort that we haven't completed yet, and a big part of our permit reform effort. And so for that permit reform effort, he wrote a little bio, and I'll share that with you now, just to give you the breadth of his experience. A little bit. It's just a taste. He didn't put everything in there. He didn't put anything in about his support for NAMI or so many other things that he was a part of. But he attained the rank of major in the Air Force during the Vietnam era. He earned a BS in commerce from St. Louis University and an MS in logistics management from the Air Force Institute of Technology. And as Jim described it, he got a half MBA from Oklahoma City University. And what happened was he got orders from the Air Force to go to Southeast Asia. And he asked his commander, a 2-star general, if he could take a pass on the assignment to finish the MBA. And the general said, when the Air Force calls, you've got to go. And told him that a Southeast Asia counter on his record would look good for a promotion, and it did. But Jim also noted that the commander was none other than the storied General Melvin McNichol, and you ought to look him up. It's so. Then, as far as Jim's history with us, as I knew him, he became a member of CCL on April 19th in 2021. That was just a little bit before I joined. So Jim welcomed me into the Snohomish chapter, actually. It was then run by Lee Alley. And when Lee decided to move to Wenatchee, he asked for a volunteer to lead the chapter. But at the time, Jim knew that he had pancreatic cancer. And so he couldn't take on that responsibility, and he made that clear. He described himself as having a limited shelf life. And so I ended up volunteering, even though I didn't feel qualified. But Jim encouraged me and told me that he would have my 6. And that was a phrase that he used often throughout our friendship. And for those that may not know, having one's 6 means, in today's jargon, means it's an old Air Force phrase, using the face of a clock to show the position of an object. Having the 6 is from directly behind. And in today's meaning, it means to provide cover and support for another. And that was something I always felt I had from Jim, his caring support. Even if that support sometimes took on a somewhat tough love, that sort of aspect, as Mark Rohde can tell you. Because if you know me, you know that sometimes that's clearly warranted. A little tough love, honesty about how I come across.
So, Skip, is there a submarine equivalent to having your 6?
That's being in one's baffles, but no, you generally didn't want to be in anybody's baffles. That's directly behind them, in a position to shoot them down, take them out. But that was the thing about Jim. He was honest. He would call them like he saw them, but with a kind and appreciative spirit, as Hans noted, and as Mark has noted. it all depended on who the listener was. Jim was very, very perceptive. And in my past, we used to call that sort of perception the ability to look around corners. And Jim would often share his worldview or his take on what was going on and what he felt would happen. And he invariably had it nailed. Historically, after Jim Rohde joined our chapter, I realized that he and Jim were just invaluable to our leadership. And I invited them both to be co-leaders with Ellie's encouragement. And that was to our chapter's great benefit. Both of them accepted and have been helping me make numerous decisions. And as Mark noted, Jim was our 1 degree of separation man. He knew everyone. And because of that, we enjoyed having numerous guest speakers at our chapter meetings. And it was just a delight who he would suggest to join in and talk to us. Jim was also prolific, as Mark has noted, as an LTE writer, letters to the editor. He took on the role of focal for our group and was just extremely helpful to anybody that wanted to write one, either inside our chapter or outside of our chapter. He also made personal contact. I remember for one meeting, prior to the meeting, he literally called everybody in our chapter, over 200 people, to try and get them to join. That was just the sort of thing he would take on. That kind of energy was just beyond me. And he was also active and very experienced in lobbying. So he would join in our lobby efforts to our members of Congress, and he would play any role, whether it was the primary ask, secondary ask, observer, note taker, whatever it was. He would jump in there and take on that role. And he loved the table. And he joined numerous tabling activities inside and outside of our chapter, just to try and help us along. So as you can see, Jim was a gem, and that's something I often called him. As a man, as a husband, as a father, a supporter of our freedom, our planet, and everyone that had the privilege to call him friend. He had our 6. And it's our loss, it's the world's loss that Jim isn't with us anymore on this endeavor. He will be missed, and he will be long remembered. So I thank you all for your tribute to Jim. I know he's in a better place. He was Catholic and definitely believed in a greater power that I'm sure he's in the loving hands of right now. So thank you all very much for joining in on this tribute.